The date is May 18th, 1995. Survivor Ben Tenenbaum, last name at birth Zellinger. The interviewer is Rivka Waxlack. The city is Long Beach in the state of New York in the United States of America. The language is English. I am Rivka Waxlack. This is Ben Tenenbaum. We will conduct the interview in English in the city of Long Beach.
Date?
May 18th, 1995. Can you do that over?
Stand by.
Mr. Tenenbaum, thank you so much for participating in this project. Can you please tell me your full name?
My full name is Abraham Ben Zion Tenenbaum.
And can you spell that for us?
ABRAHAMBENZIONTENENBAUM.
Was this the name you were given at birth?
No, my birth I was Zellinger, Zeilinger.
And where were you born?
I was born in Khust in the Carpathian Mountains, a province of Czechoslovakia.
Near what city is that?
Khust is between Munkac and Sighet.
And why was your name at birth Zellinger?
Because my father's name was really Zellinger, but my grandparents weren't legally married just by the rabbi. So therefore, for official documents, I had to assume my grandmother's name, which was Tenenbaum.
What were your parents' names?
My father's name was Borg Hersch Zellinger. My mother's name was Sarah, or Sora.
What was her family name?
Her family name was Farkas.
And where did your father come from?
My father was born and raised in Galicia in a little town called Berjan. And from there he went to school to Satmar, and from Satmar he married into Khust.
Whom did he marry in Khust? Was that your mother?
No, he married his first wife there by the name of Rivka. And she died at a very young age and left 5 small children, age 1 to 6.
And then?
And then he married my mother. And subsequently my mother had 7 more children with my father.
Can you name all your brothers and sisters?
Yes, I can. It started with Laia Freide, and then Sura, Jita, Zisel, and Pearl. Then for my mother it was Rivke and Bluma and myself, then my younger brother Moshe Chaim, Yankov Berish, Shula Mordechai, and my younger sister Chana Brana.
Was your family a religious family?
Very.
They were Hasidim?
My father was a Vizhnitzer Chassid, and my father was ultra Orthodox to the point where when I was a youngster and I wanted to join the Agudim, my father was very upset and bodily came and took me out of the meeting that I went to.
When did you try to join the Aguda?
Oh, I was about 14 or 15.
Why did you try to join it?
Because I had a little Zionistic feelings already, and I was trying to join the more modern way of life.
Were there any incidents happening in your native area that made you feel that you wanted to join the Aguda?
Well, there was a lot of anti-Semitism already at that point, and we knew that our only salvation would be eventually to leave. And if we leave, we have to, we would go to Israel, or to then Palestine.
But your father didn't let you join the Aguda?
No, my father was so strict on that point that even before the ghetto, there was a rumor that for $5,000 you can buy a certificate to go to Israel. And he said, no, we have to wait for Mashiach, and we'll only go to Israel after Mashiach comes.
Could he have paid for the entire family to have gone to Israel?
No, I don't think he could.
Your family was quite large.
My father had 12 children, out of which 5 were already married, with 21 grandchildren.
Do you remember the husbands of your 5 older sisters, their names?
Sure.
Can you tell me?
My oldest brother-in-law was Suryankar Zoldan, who lived in Khost. My second brother-in-law was Wolf Friedman, who lived in Bereksas, who has one daughter survived. Incidentally, one daughter survived of Suryankar Zoldan also. Then my next brother-in-law was Chaim Yankel Weiss. And then was Daniel Adler, who survived and subsequently married my younger sister that survived, Rivka. And my youngest brother-in-law was Simcha Iskovich, also came from Khost.
Okay. Were you close to these sisters and their families?
We were very close. In fact, I was about 14 years old when I found out that we weren't from the same mother. And I came to my mother and I asked her too. She says, don't ask no questions. What do you have to know that for? We were so close that we never knew the difference.
What did your father do for a living?
My father had a seltzer factory, or in Yiddish a soda fabrik.
Was it a large factory?
In Europe, it was the size of this room.
Did he employ anybody? Did he have
Yeah, he had
workers?
one employer who dragged a little wagon by hand to distribute the seltzer bottles to the clients.
Was he able to support the family comfortably?
Yes, under those circumstances there, quite comfortably.
Do you remember the address where you lived?
Yes, we lived in 49 Masaryk Street. Later, when Hungarians came in, it was called Rákóczi Street.
When did the Hungarians come in?
The Hungarians came in somewhere around 1940, when Czechoslovakia broke up. So they took a part of Czechoslovakia back, as probably with Hitler's permission.
Can you describe the house in which you lived?
Well, the house that I lived in we had a kitchen and a living room and 2 bedrooms. But although we were 7 children, one of the bedrooms used to be rented out to a yeshiva bocher or something, and we slept 4 or 5 in the living room.
What language did you speak at home?
We spoke predominantly Yiddish. I didn't know Czech very little. I knew a little Hungarian, but we spoke 90% Yiddish.
In your day-to-day life, did you come into contact with non-Jews?
No.
You dealt only with Jews in your day-to-day life?
Well, in my childhood, I was a youngster. I went to Cheder at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I came home at 8 o'clock at night. And that went on all the way to the Cheder till I was 13. And then when I went to yeshiva again, we started at 5 in the morning and all day long. So we really had no way of getting in contact with anybody.
What did you do? Did you have any time for fun? Did you do anything for relaxation,
No,
hobbies?
just learning. As a matter of fact, my father didn't even permit me to go to public school for 2 reasons. Number 1, we had to sit together with girls in the same class. And number 2, you had to sit with Ari Yarmakon in public school. So I didn't really learn the Latin alphabet. My father hired a bocher to teach me the alphabet until I was about 12 years old.
Wasn't public school compulsory? Didn't they have to send you to public school?
No, if you went to Cheder, you were exempt.
Did you ever have experiences of anti-Semitism when you were younger?
Oh my God, constantly. We used to go with fright. There were times when we used to go 5 o'clock in the winter in the morning. We'd be afraid we'd get beaten up by Schutzim or hollered after you dirty Jew and so forth. We were especially after the Hungarians came in, we were very much aware of anti-Semitism.
How did your family prepare for Yontif? Did you have a different routine when it was time for a holiday?
Well, Yontif was really Yontif. For Pesach, my father started preparing matzahs he baked sometimes 3 months before Pesach, because over there everybody had their own. He bought his flour, and he made an appointment. There was 3 or 4 places that baked matzahs, started around Chanukah time, and he made the reservation which day to bake his matzahs. And he would go and tip all the women that were making the matzahs and make sure that they make them thin, and the one that baked the oven, the baker shouldn't burn them, and that was his day for baking matzahs. It was a big event of the year. My mother started making borscht for Pesach 2 months before Pesach, put it in a barrel. She started to, they slaughtered very stuffed chicken, heavy chicken, fatty chicken, and geese to save schmaltz for Pesach. So for Pesach they started 3 months before. For Pesach I remember clearly, normally in a normal week we would use 1 or 2 eggs in the house because we didn't need many eggs in the house. For Pesach I remember her quota was 300 eggs. So she started buying eggs 5-6 weeks before Pesach, bargaining for prices every week, 10 eggs here, 20 eggs there, until she had a quota of 300 eggs. So the preparation for Pesach. And then my father, when he had the matzahs, thank God I have matzahs. When he had the wine bought, there was another big to do. Thank God I have matzahs for Pesach. By the time Pesach came along, and he had everything for Pesach, and then we used to trot out the new clothing for Pesach, and it was something that we looked forward all year before Pesach. That's the only time we would get some new clothing.
Was your family, so your family was not rich, even though?
No, my family, in under those conditions there, where so many of the people were poor, my father would be considered, in today's environment, middle class.
Did you have friends from yeshiva?
Many friends. We had friends, Bukharim, but no girls. We weren't allowed even to go on the side of a girl.
And what did you do when you had the opportunity to entertain yourselves? How did you entertain yourselves with your friends?
Just by telling tales of tzaddikim, of Hasidim, and talking about Torah, nothing of the modern world.
Your father was a Vishnitzer Chassid. Did he go to visit the Rebbe?
Yes, my father used to go every Rosh Hashanah to the Vishnitzer Rebbe. And whenever the Vishnitzer Rebbe used to come out to visit for a Shabbos nearby, I would go along with him. We would take food along. He would just rent somewhere a bed, and we would sleep together and be for Shabbos by the Rebbe.
What was the Rebbe's name?
The Rebbe's name was, the very old Rebbe's name was Rabbi Yisroel Hager, and then became his son Remendela Hager, the Vishavaruf. And we went to him.
Mm-hmm. You were your father's oldest son,
I was the oldest son.
so he would take you everywhere. Did you ever help your father in the factory? Did you ever work with him?
No, I was assigned to learn, study Torah, not until in the very later years, when we'll come later, my father was arrested and put into a Hungarian concentration camp for 6 months. I used to go to the factory to help fill the water, the seltzer water.
Did he want you to grow up to be a rabbi?
I was too young to even then, but I don't think my father had intentions of me becoming a rabbi. But I was scheduled to wear a streimel and a beketje at the Hasidische Torah, but I don't think it ever came to being what he wanted me to be.
After Cheder, where did you go learn, and how old were you?
After Cheder, I was about 14. I learned a few years in Chus. Then I learned 1 year in the Vishiva by the Vishnitzer Rebbe, by the Vishiva Roof. And then I learned 1 year in Rachav, by the Rachav Roof.
You know, I must apologize. I don't remember asking you when you were born.
I was born in 1925, in December,
What day?
25th.
So when the Hungarians came into your town, you were how old?
I was about 14 or 15.
Did things change when the Hungarians came into your town?
Oh yes, when the Hungarians came in, For a while they left us alone. Then came the Jewish laws. First they confiscated all Jewish businesses. No Jew could own a business. They took them away and they distributed them to non-Jews, lock, stock, and barrel. And then us youngsters had to go to a young military camp twice a week called Levante. We just went there for practicing, for army practicing, but no weapons. And the Jews were not taken into the army anymore. They were taken into work camps, labor camps. And all of the Jewish stores were taken away from the Jews. Until then, I would say 99% of the stores in our town were Jewish. But then they were all taken away, the licenses, and they couldn't operate. In my father's case, they took away from my father the seltzer factory, and they gave it to this Hungarian who came from Miskolc by the name of Jakab János, who subsequently saved my life, which we'll come to later.
Were you still in yeshiva when the Hungarians came in?
Yes.
Where were you?
In Chust.
In Chust. Did you leave Chust at some point while the Hungarians were in? Did you go?
Yes, I went to Visheva, the yeshiva, when they came in, and I went to Rachov when the Hungarians were there already.
The Hungarians came in 1940, and you continued in yeshiva until what time?
I continued yeshiva till about 43, till the ghetto came. I was in the yeshiva.
And what were the first signs that told you that there was danger coming? How did things change?
Oh, we knew, we heard what's happening in Poland.
What did you hear?
We heard that they're, first of all, and I think in 1942, I'm not sure of the date, they, on a morning, unaware of anything, we knew that we were tipped off. My father was from Poland, which is a foreigner. We had heard that the Hungarians are preparing to take away out the people who have no citizenship. And my father bribed one of the policemen who kept his papers to take my father's file out of the file. And therefore, when one day they came early in the morning and they took all the foreign Jews out of their homes. Incidentally, they took a lot of people who were born in Chust and grandfather, but they didn't have citizens' papers for some reason. They took them and they took them to the train of maybe about 100 people from Chust and from all other towns, and they took them into Poland, into Ukraine, into a town called Kamieniec-Podolsk. And about 4 weeks later, a few of them escaped and came back to tell us that one day the Germans took them all and made them dig a big ditch, and about 18,000 of them were shot. And that was the first mass execution in Poland after the Germans came in. And a lot of our people were there in that Kamieniec-Podolsk. And if my father hadn't taken out that file, our family would have gone to Kamieniec-Podolsk also.
Do you remember when this happened?
I think it happened in 1942.
What time of year was that?
It happened in the 3 weeks. We always figured that in the 3 Wochen something bad always happened. It happened in the 3 weeks without any warning. They just knocked on the door to those people that they took away, and they took the whole family with them to the train straight without any pre-warning.
Do you remember the name of the policeman who took your father's file out?
No.
No. Where were you during this event? Were you in yeshiva or were you at home?
I was at home.
You were home. What happened after that?
After that, it's very interesting. My father sent me to sleep to my sister's house because he was watching over me, be careful, whatever happens, nothing should happen to me, his oldest son, in case this happens again. And he was also afraid that a lot of the Goyim and even some of the Jews, and all of the Jews knew that my father was Polish. And everybody was wondering how come they didn't take him. And he was afraid that somebody is going to squeal. So I slept for a while in my sister's house that in case they come to take him, I shouldn't be taken with him.
Which sister was this?
Yita.
Were there any hardships that your family was enduring as a result of the loss of the factory and the occupation?
No, it so happens that this guy, Jakob Janse, took over the factory. As he took it over, he said to my father, that it's unfortunate they took it away, but it's also fortunate that I took it away from you, and I'll let you stay and work in the factory, because he didn't know nothing about operating a seltzer factory, and I will pay you. And as a result, my father had good pay from him, and he had enough money to provide for his family.
Do you remember about your brothers-in-law, your sister's husbands, how they were managing? Were they able to manage with their families?
Well, one of my brothers-in-law, Yankov Zoldan, was doing very good. He went to Budapest every week, and he dealt in textile, and he was doing very good. The other three brothers went into the labor camp and left their families home, and they had a tough time. My father helped to help them out and keep them going.
How about the rest of the town of Khust? Did you have a sense of how your neighbors were doing?
We knew we were all in the same boat. Everybody was struggling to just survive, and everybody was trying to hope we were listening to the radio for something to happen to better ourselves. And we were hearing already what's happening in Poland, and we were hearing what in Hungary, so far they let us go, and we had no problems.
Was there enough food at this time?
There was enough potatoes and dark bread. White flour was already scarce, but the protein foods was relatively enough, beans, and because we were in a farm country. So we didn't suffer from food. And as a matter of fact, we had a lot of Polish Jews escape to the borders because we weren't far from the Polish border. And they were amazed how well we are living compared to what they were going through in Poland in those days.
When Polish refugees came in, did the town take them in? Did they help them out?
Oh yes, we took them in, and most of them went from us to Budapest. Of course, it was punishable. It was very severe crime. In Budapest, they had a haven. This General Anders was taking them all in. So, but the community helped them, provide them transportation to Budapest. As a matter of fact, that's when my father got into trouble, because my nephew, my mother's brother's son from Pressburg, they was already starting to transport the Pressburg Jews to Auschwitz or to Poland, whatever. And he escaped his son and came to our house. And we don't know who. Somebody squealed that my father is housing a Slovakian refugee. And they caught him. And I remember he was kept in jail for interrogation. And we weren't far, we were on the street. And we could hear him scream. They were torturing him for 3 days, something awful, and beating him until he admitted that my father kept him. And after he did that, they sent them both away to Hungarian concentration camp in Sátorújhely. And my father was there for 6 months. And I clearly remember that my sister, Blima, who's here now, went up with my brother-in-law, Yankov Zoldan, to Budapest, and they got some special protection. They shouldn't cut my father's beard off in that camp, and he was the only one that they let alone there without cutting his beard off.
Do you remember when that happened?
That happened in 1943.
What time of year?
It happened, they took away my father, Erev Yom Kippur.
How long was he away?
6 months.
And how did he come back? Did they release him?
After 6 months, well, we worked very hard in Budapest with the Jewish council and officials, and after 6 months they released him.
Were there any other incidents that took place during this time in the German occupation? Hungarian occupation?
No, not really. We were living, of course, we had the policemen with their feathers in their heads, and they were very strict and strong. They would, once in a while, on a Sunday, if there was a soldiers traveling by, they would come off the train and catch Jews on the street and beat them up, and we would try to stay inside. Or sometimes when when the Christians would come out of the church, and if they were steamed up against Jews, they would beat you up on the street. I remember one Sunday they cut for one of the Jews half of his beard off. But those were minor incidents compared to what we were hearing from Poland and Slovakia, what's happening. So I would say, relatively speaking, we were very well off then.
Was it still possible at that time to have to have bought your way out of the country to Israel, the way it had been a few years earlier?
No, I don't know. From our time, no one is gone. Later on, when the Germans came in, there was one transport that went from Budapest which included the Satmar roof and the Belzer roof, and that they escaped to Israel. But nobody from our town.
Did members of your town leave earlier in 1940, back when you had wanted
Before
to?
then, yes, we had Hachsharas, what they called. We had a big sniff of Betar and a Shomer Tzayir, and we had a sniff of Mizrahi and Aguda. As a matter of fact, the rabbi from Jerusalem, Rav Dushinsky, was the Chista Roof, and he left Chus to become chief rabbi of Jerusalem.
When did he
And
leave?
I remember him. In fact, I have somewhere a picture, him holding me. I was a young boy I was about 5 or 6 years old when he left Chus to become chief rabbi of Jerusalem. And then there were a lot of other people that went to settle in Israel. There were some people who went to settle in America.
So people did have a sense that conditions were getting unfavorable
Oh
to
yes,
the...
I remember one time Jabotinsky came to Chist and he made a speech, there is a fire coming, save yourself, run to Israel. And nobody believed him.
About how many people left for Israel in those years? Would you have an estimate?
I would say about 15 or 20, mostly young boys, went to Achshara, and from Achshara they became Chalutzim and went to Israel, to the kibbutzim.
That was before
And a
now.
few of them, older people, went to spend their old age to die in Israel, maybe 5 or 6.
So you continue the next thing.
We'll continue on the next tape. This is tape 2. This is Ben Tenenbaum being interviewed by Rivka Waxlack, May 18th, 1995. When did the Germans, the Gestapo, occupy the town?
In 1944, in March, there was all of a sudden there was a change of government in Hungary, to more fascist government, and all of a sudden all the Germans came in and occupied the whole Hungary. Until then, we never saw a German. And in our town, in my experience, this was around Purim time. We didn't see many German soldiers only a detail of the SS Gestapo came in, and they first